or hear his speech, so I'm not gonna talk much about this. Welcome, Reagan Pugh, please.
Thank you. Hey guys, how we doing? We're some brave people, fire in your bones, and probably heated seats in your car. I was in a car recently at a client last week, and they had a heated steering wheel. Did you know these existed? Wow! I still have like a, car. Um, Please, let's have a conversation tonight. I'm grateful to be here. I get to do some work with Douglas and Voltage Control on a pretty frequent basis. And then other than that, I have a consulting firm called Assemble with two other gentlemen here in Austin. And our work is focused exclusively on the art of collaboration. So strategic workshops, creative workshops, all that kind of stuff, that and keynotes. And that makes up my life. And I have a dog named Lily. Wish I could have brought her. All right. Let us first begin. And if you've been to these events before with Douglas, you know that a lot of times they're pretty experiential. Like we want to try and practice something that we're going to do in the real world. So, especially since we're talking about psychological safety, I find that to open up a room full of people, it's good to pause at the very beginning. And I like to offer a moment. Just commit. You got it. Good. I like to pause and have a moment of gratitude because, we carry our whole lives into the room. Like it follows us like a tail, whatever happened to us throughout the day. And if we're thinking about something and we're preoccupied, we're going to miss things that come to us in the room, and we might not be available to whatever happens. So, man, if we're at our office or jumping between meetings in the workplace, it's nice to give our people a chance to pause and just think about what's going right. So steal this. I always like to do this, and I feel like it makes a difference. So just think for a second about something that's going right for you. You could have snoozed your alarm today. You could be one of those people that has a heated steering wheel. Or you could be really rich and you have like heated floors in your bathroom. Your kids, your family, the job that you get, the community that we get to be a part of, something that's going right for you. Go ahead and find a neighbor. Make sure you say hi to them. Introduce yourself if you haven't, and share, this is what's going right for me in life right now. If it needs to be a trio, that's awesome. I'll give you a minute. Go. This is what's going right. About 30 more seconds. Share what's going right. About 10 seconds. All right, we're wrapping it up. Oh, good. So can I hear, we got to share this. So can I hear three things, but you don't have to, don't worry. You don't have to say, let me tell you how grateful I am. If you heard something great from a neighbor, share your neighbor. Be like, I heard this and it was just really illuminating. And I'm glad that I heard my My neighbors say that today. I need 3. Yes. Got a new job. Congratulations. Love it. Yes, sir.
Ivan gets to travel everywhere.
He gets to travel everywhere and has the best sweater I've seen in a long time. Has everyone seen it? Okay, very good. Very good. Thank you. And then one more. 3-legged stool. Thank you.
She had a nice snuggle with her nephew.
Oh,
Nice because it's nice to appreciate the little things sometimes.
what a day. What a day for snuggles. Yep, I love it. Okay, here's the deal. And if you don't believe it and if you don't see it, that's fine. Hopefully you'll see it over the course of the evening. But I hope that you felt like the room lighten just a bit. And I hope that you felt the maybe silos that we were in our chairs kind of like dissolve just a bit. Maybe that means that one of us ends up in the elevator with someone tonight and we have a conversation we wouldn't have. Maybe that means we now have a connection with someone that we can ask a question. Like, who knows? But I believe that if we start with intention, the intention of our meeting is not the meeting. There's always a larger intention. And what is that? It's always going to be human connection, first of all. So if we can connect before content, connection before content, this is how we begin to create a culture of psychological safety, which is what I want to talk about with you tonight. And I'm supposed to give you a hot mic because we're filming, but please, hit me with questions whenever, and interrupt me and all that stuff. Okay, so let's now with our new friends, let's just share like an experience about being on a very ineffective team. Let's just try, like drop us into the middle of the scene. So there I was, and we were supposed to be doing X, and this was going wrong. Drop me into the scene. I give you a few minutes. Go. Thanks. 30 more seconds or so. Mm. 15 more seconds or so. Ten more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, wrap it up, friends. This is a good problem for me to have. We want to continue talking to each other. That's wonderful. Last time I gave a talk in this room, no one wanted to talk to each other. So like I walked in here like afraid, like I walked in here like this was like the field that I broke my leg on in like the playoffs, and then I had to come back next season to the playoffs against the same team. So thanks for making it a little bit easier. I was told I have to stay behind this so all of the people that are live streaming this can see me. So maybe I'll break the rules every once in a while. What did we hear? What happens on an ineffective team? Communication breaks down. Lord God Almighty. What else? Huge egos. It's all about me. What else? Self-protection. Whoa, which I mean, let's skip to the end, is rooted in fear. What else? What's that? Limited perspective, and maybe not a willingness to have a different one. Finger pointing. No way I have a part to play in this. Fight or flight. Man, I feel scared, so instead of dealing with this, I'm going to devolve to base instincts. Anything else? Those are great. I just wanted to give us a tangible connection with experiences that we've had. Spoiler, I'm going to probably say that most of those situations you were involved with individuals or teams who had a low sense of psychological safety. So if we didn't feel safe to be who we are, to ask questions, to make different contributions, and to challenge authority, we feel like we have to prove ourselves or we hide. And either way, we're not getting the kind of contributions that could happen from a team, and therefore that team can be labeled ineffective. But on the other hand, let's just popcorn this. How do we get teams to be more effective? And this, what do you think? This is what we're going to talk about tonight. How do we get teams to be more effective? Sharing? Great.
Maybe talk about what went wrong.
Yeah.
Being open about mistakes.
Being open about mistakes with like no like you're such an idiot language, right? Yeah, good. What else? Selfless collaboration. The whole is greater than my individual desires. Beautiful. What else? Yeah, consider what might be someone's area of expertise and let them lean toward that.
Alignment on one goal.
Let's all get behind one goal and let's take the time to make sure everyone's invested. Giving everyone, oh, bro, we got some good language on this. Yeah. What happens when we have a room full of people and the same 3 people talk every time, but there's 10 people in the room? Calamity. Myopicness. Yeah, those things happen. Thank you for participating. Please continue. One goal only tonight is to make our teams more effective by making sure that everyone feels safe to contribute. So let's talk a little bit about like the psychological safety game. Let's see where your team is currently at, or if you're participating on a team or leading a team. And then let's talk about some tools that you might be able to use to help create more psychological safety to make your team more effective. Real quick, briefly, who here's like familiar with the term more than just I saw it on the meetup poster? Like I read a blog about it before or something. Okay, who's like, I'm really interested to find out what this is about. I came here because I thought Douglas would be here, and I'm sad he's gone. Okay, cool. Good, thank you. Hopefully we're all going to learn something. So I'm going to tell you the story of psychological safety from like when it came about from Google. But first, I'd like to tell you a little story about when I used to be a management consultant, and I was on the marketing team for this Deloitte-style consulting firm. And so that meant that what I got to do was go to clients that we were working on and find all of the stories from the clients about how we helped those clients achieve innovation in their companies. And then I had a film crew, and I would film stories of them sharing how great we were and how much we helped them change, so that then we could share those marketing stories and get more clients like them to pay us more money. So I said Deloitte style, kind of, and that's really not a way to like not say Deloitte. I would just say it. It's so man, it was a fantastic gig. I travel around all the place and do video shoots. So I remember we were going to one organization, and I was going to interview 2 different teams at this organization to get their feedback about our process. And I recall the senior manager on that project said to me, "Hey, I just want you to know, one of these teams has it together and they've been super high performing. The other one, they're not doing so hot, so it might be tough for you to get them to share some real positive stories on camera because they're having a really hard time being effective. So just know that one's doing real hot, one is not doing so hot." So I remember being like, okay, that's fine, cool. So I roll in, and I remember I showed up to the first meeting. I was just going to sit and get a feel for Team A, and understand their meeting, and then I was going to use that meeting to pick out a few people in the meeting that I was going to want to interview for a video later, like in another room where we had lights set up. So I remember I showed up, and I was on time, but like this was the kind of meeting where being on time, I was late. You know what I mean? And they were already sitting around, and they had printed out agendas on the table. And I remember there was someone that they had not only like the one whiteboard marker, but they had 3 whiteboard markers in their knuckles like Wolverine, and they already had them uncapped, and so they were going to be ready to color code the board. You know, like this was an intense meeting. And they went around the table, and everyone shared the relevant piece of information that was relevant to their role. And other than that, no one else chatted. It was efficient, and the meeting ended early. Afterward, everyone rose, and they left, and they got back to work. And I just remember thinking to myself, what a well-oiled machine. I feel like, dude, I didn't shave enough today. Like, I feel bad for just existing. And, okay, so now I'm going to the next meeting, and because that meeting ended early, I showed up to Team B's meeting early. So I'm waiting. Time for the meeting to start. Nobody's there. About 5 minutes after the meeting's supposed to start, a few people wander in, and everybody's kind of loud. There's no real agenda. It's not clear when the meeting begins or when we stop talking about our weekends. Next thing I know, people are sharing a few different ideas and updates on projects. A few people are kind of interrupting each other, but they also have this thing where they finish one another's sentences, and they seem to be really in sync with one another. They have a really great time. They agree on 2 or 3 things that they're going to focus on. Then the meeting kind of dissolves, and a few people end up just hanging around and eating their lunch in the conference room instead of going back to work, and it's not really clear when the meeting ended. And I remember going to the senior manager on the project and saying, he said, how did it go? I said, well, it went great, but I mean, I can totally tell what you meant about Team B, how they're just a hot mess. And he said, Team B. I said, yeah, the ones, and they're loud, and they have all the inside jokes, and they don't seem to start on time. He said, no. They're killing it. They're knocking it out of the park. I said, no, but there's the one where they run like a Swiss watch, and everyone has their role. And he said, yeah, dude, they can't find their way out of a wet paper bag, and they're so frustrated with themselves. In this moment, I started to ask myself questions about what an effective team is really comprised of. And it wasn't until I found this work of psychological safety that I had some answers. So let me give you a little bit of history, and then we'll come back to that story. Google did it, all right? So they got together, and they said, we want to create a study on what makes the team most effective. So they dubbed this event Project Aristotle. Project Aristotle. And it was really comprehensive, and it was a really big study because they wanted to look over the course of 2 years, like 180 teams, like 200 interviews, and like 250 attributes of collaboration they studied across the board to answer this question, what makes for the most effective team? That simple question. There are some that perform well, some that don't. How do we understand the ingredient so that we can replicate it? They thought it has, so these are the questions that they were trying to answer. For a given type of problem, what diverse characteristics should a team possess to have the best chance of solving it? What are the biggest influencers of a satisfying and productive work experience? How can peak performance be sustained over decades? How are ideas born? How do they die? How do we maximize happiness and productivity at the same time? 2 years, all kinds of people, all kinds of questions to try and answer these big questions that we have about the business of working with one another. And they were certain that the answer was going to be, well, it's clear. You have to find a team of all-stars. Like, it's clear. Go and identify the people who have the requisite skill sets, who are experts at their craft, and put everyone in the right seat on the bus, and you are going to find the team that is going to perform most effectively. It makes sense. It's intuitive, but this was false. Here's what else didn't matter, in addition to like having the right people with the perfect skills. What else didn't matter was like the co-location of teammates. Were they in a place like this? Consensus-driven decision-making. the extroversion of the team members, how social they were, the individual performance, their workload size, seniority, the size of the team, tenure with the organization. None of these things mattered. Instead, and you can find this on Work. If you Google that, rework, this is the conversation they host to this day, where they found the ingredients of the most successful teams. Psychological safety, dependability, structure and clarity, meaning and impact. And you'll notice at the top of the list, far and away, is psychological safety, simply defined. Team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of one another. There's like 3 or 4 other definitions that I like, that I want to give you, because sometimes we need a different way of hearing it for it to be sticky. So, this is from Rework. Psychological safety refers to an individual's perception of the consequences of taking an interpersonal risk, or a belief that a team is safe for risk-taking in the face of being seen as ignorant, incompetent, negative, or disruptive. Amy Edmondson, who we'll talk about a little bit tonight, says psychological safety means ensuring no one is penalized if they ask for help or admit a mistake, and they can openly disagree without fear of ridicule or punishment. Amy Edmondson again says psychological safety is crucial in organizations where knowledge constantly changes, where workers need to collaborate, and where those workers must make decisions without management or leadership intervention. Most of her research in psychological safety was on nurses in the healthcare system who are terrified to bring up issues to physicians. And then last, by Rework one more time. In a team with high psychological safety, teammates feel safe to take risks around their team members. They feel confident that no one on the team will embarrass or punish anyone else for admitting a mistake, asking a question, or offering a new idea. To me, if you walk away with one thing from this evening, this is the takeaway. Where we thought who in the room mattered most, we're now learning that how we assemble ourselves together, how we structure our interactions, how we treat one another, how we behave as a unit is more important than who is on our team. If we can create a team that is full of safety, where people can disagree, ask questions, and be willing to fail without fear of repercussion, how will allow us to be more effective than getting all stars, who, right out of the gate. I like to call this, I wish I had an Italian grandmother that was like leaning out a window, like, do you want to come and eat? You look hungry, you know, but I call this the grandmother paradox, right? This is stuff your grandmother told you. My Nana, Bessie Burrell Pugh, told me all of this stuff. Treat people well. Don't make them feel stupid. If they have a question, that probably means they didn't have the opportunity that you once had to learn. Give them a leg up. So you've been given that opportunity in the past, but for some reason we all forget this. And my friends, maybe tonight is just a reminder to be a little bit nicer. And if that's all it is, I'm okay with that. Charles Duhigg, who wrote the book The Power of Habit, really got into this work. So now this is his new kind of habit like subject. He's super into psychological safety right now. He wrote an article in the New York Times where he talks about how we can't over-engineer interactions. Project Aristotle is a reminder that when companies try to optimize everything, it's sometimes easy to forget that success is often built on experiences, like emotional interactions and complicated conversations and discussions of who we want to be and how our teammates make us feel. They can't really be optimized. I was looking on Amazon today, you know, Oprah's dropping her favorite things. Oprah also dropped some wisdom when she's had that line where she said, people are going to forget what you said, people are going to forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. We know that. So, this gets complicated because, you know, we've got the amygdala, we've got the lizard brain, and we are rooted in a fear of looking bad or being embarrassed because we don't want to get kicked out of the tribe. Even though that's not an issue we have to deal with anymore, we're still afraid of social isolation. Okay? So, I don't want to look ignorant. I don't want to look incompetent or stupid or intrusive or negative. The good news is, it's really easy for me to avoid looking stupid, ignorant, incompetent, intrusive, negative. All I have to do is not ask questions, not admit weaknesses, not present ideas, and not offer critique. And I can get a paycheck from you and get health benefits and have a wonderful career at your company and get a bonus at the Christmas party without having to leave my comfort zone. Who here has been in this situation or knows people in your organization who have lived their lives in this place of fear and then seclusion? Yeah, that's a real thing. Unsafe teams will break or underperform drastically because people can't introduce change. If I'm an unsafe team, that doesn't mean that I'm competitive. That means that I'm resistant to new things. How am I going to be an excellent team if I'm not allowing new and innovative ideas and opinions to come across our table? How is greater than who? Tattoo that on your forearm. Okay, so what does psychological safety look like for you? We got let's just see this, who's freelancer, works for yourself, contractor, jumps between teams, okay? Who's in a dedicated team in an organization right now? Okay, okay, cool. And then anything else, startup, smaller company, anything? Okay, cool. So this is great because it sounds like we've got a lot of folks who are already on teams and then folks who jump from different teams. So let's have one of those really rich conversations like we've been practicing together tonight. Let's have another fireside chat with one another. And I want you to read this list of elements of psychological safety that I'm about to put up there and just chat with your group about which ones resonate with you. You could read something and go, oh, actually we do this really well. Or you might read one and say, oh man, that one is a sore spot for us. And I'm going to give us a little bit of extra time on this. And we've been doing 2 minutes so far. I guess 4 minutes. It'll fly by, I promise. So here are the questions. I'll read them out loud real quick. Think of a team you work with closely. How strongly do you agree with these statements? If I take a chance and screw up, it will be held against me. Our team has a strong sense of culture that can be hard for new people to join. We're really good, but we're really good and we like it the way it is. My team is slow to offer help to people who are struggling. Ain't my problem. Using my unique skills and talents comes second to the objectives of the team. Maybe one day when we have a little bit more bandwidth, then you'll be able to do that thing that you're really passionate about contributing. And then lastly, it's uncomfortable to have open and honest conversations about our team's sensitive issues. I was working with an executive team recently, and we were running pretty good on day one of our workshop sessions. And then on day two, everyone came into the session with their tail between their legs and really nervous. We finally got to lunchtime, and I pulled someone aside and said, yo, day one, it felt like we were safe, we were contributing, we were going. Today, it feels like everything's different. What's going on? They said, well, we went out last night, and one of our VPs, we started calling this thing, we have a term for it. It's called nighttime feelings. And it kind of happens after he's had a few drinks. And next thing you know, he started giving it to some of the interns. And then I tried to step in and defend them. And he told me exactly what he thought about me. And so we're all still a little bruised from that conversation. He said, but we'll get through it. I said, hold on. So we'll get through it. I said, is this a common thing? And he was like, yeah, it happens every once in a while. I was like, how long's every once in a while? He was like, well, we have a private Slack channel called Nighttime Feelings. I was like, you have a private Slack to report this? And he was like, yeah, it happens pretty often. And I was like, okay, interesting. But we're afraid to talk about our sensitive issues because it might frustrate the wrong person. So for you, have a conversation. Which one resonates with you? I'd love for each person to get to share your experience. So please share enough, but like also limit it so that everyone can have a chance. Very good? Go for it. Here's my mic again. Teacher time, you know. I'll tell you what I did notice. I noticed people who a lot of whom didn't know each other prior, sharing some pretty real stuff. So thank you for going there. Again, not every group does. So I appreciate you being willing to have a real conversation, make use of our time. Can I hear some things that struck you? You heard something interesting, you heard something that you connected with, or you heard something new. Can I have a few? Can we learn from each other? What do we hear? What do we hear? What do we talk about? Yes.
What is great to my heart is that we're all bringing our own personalities to these things as well. And so, even the environment itself might try to be encouraging and loving, so there might be internal ideas that we're telling ourselves that are holding us back. And you need to deliver that to your own.
Yeah, and I mean, how many of us find our identity in what we do? And if we have such an intimate connection with our work and that feels rejected, then inherently we believe that they might be rejecting us. I think we've got two core questions in our minds. Do they like me and am I doing a good job? And man, if we feel like our personality is in somehow conflict with a group, that's tough to swallow. Yeah. What else do we? This is great. Thank you. We're just going to do the theme from each group. What was our theme in this large group?
And how do you measure the success of a group? Is it just business statistics, metrics, or like how that can sometimes counteract with the psychological safety if people feel like they're just a number on a chart or a meter or whatever the system is?
Yeah. How much are we optimizing this? Well, how inefficient it is to pay attention to the internal lives of our people. Why do we have to slow down and do that? Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And then, what do we have?
One thing I heard pretty prominently was a team where someone, there's an entrenched system is working, and new people come in, and sort of their ideas are rejected because there's a particular way this team has always been working, and they don't want to disrupt their methods, even if it might not be working quite as well as it should, or maybe new people can't really have a say in changing it because they're it's just the way we do.
Yeah, we've experienced just the way we do it, right? From dad all the way to driver's ed. I just wanted to alliterate. Yeah, this is just the way that we do it. Thank you guys for sharing. Thanks for talking about that. I've got some good news for you, friends. There is a way to change this on our teams. And I want to tell you the three activities or the three key behaviors that Google has identified as ways to create psychological safety on your team. They are painfully obvious. But hopefully we can find some nuance in them and understand them for the simple beauty that they are. Take notes. 1, equality in conversational turn taking. I heard earlier, everyone gets a chance to talk. If each person speaks roughly the same amount, the team is more likely to succeed. Period. Did you know that they're so serious about this? They're like, I don't know if it's a Kickstarter or not, but there is technology that is being developed. 2 things. 1, there's an app, I forget what it's called, on your phone that it learns each person's voice, and you put the phone in the middle of the meeting, and afterward, it sends you a report out of who spoke the most, and you get all kinds of data based on your meeting. This is even better. They've got like you know who this would be cool, right? This would be cool. They even have like a Sky Mall version of this, that they actually have a desk that has LCD screens as the desk, and you have like a meter in front of where you're sitting, and it records like how much you talk, so people can see it in real life, who's hoarding the conversation in a meeting. If each person speaks roughly the same amount, the team is more likely to succeed. Here's what blew my mind whenever I was reading this. This means that throughout the course of a meeting, you're pausing to make sure that someone who doesn't contribute very often is invited to contribute. This also means that if you know, because we know, if you know that that person is perhaps made a little uncomfortable by being put on the spot to share in a meeting, and they might not share when they're put on the spot, but we do it anyway because sometimes we're stupid, that means that we make the effort to talk to them ahead of the meeting and say, we really want to hear from you. What would it take for me to be able to help you to feel safe in sharing some ideas? Because we really care about what you have to say. Here's what blew my mind even more about this research, that in studying all of the teams over the 2 years that they studied, this rang true for every single one of them, that people spoke roughly the same amount. And listen to this. It didn't even matter in the meetings observed what the people spoke about as long as they spoke roughly the same amount. What does that mean? That means someone just won a lottery and went on a carnival cruise, and they talked about that. That means someone is struggling to understand which kind of cat food to buy for their cat, and so they talked about that. If people spoke roughly the same amount in that meeting, over the long term, that team was more effective. Why? Because they were allowed to be heard. And do you think they leave that sense of being heard in that meeting room, or do you think they carry that with them into the rest of their work and throughout the rest of the week? So whenever I got a chance to be heard in a meeting, even if I wasn't totally on topic, I felt heard. So then when I had to go crank some hours out late that night, I was more inclined to stay and contribute for my team because I know that they're interested in what I have to say. Wow. How do we make sure that we're inviting people to share more? How do we make sure that everyone has roughly the same opportunity to share in each meeting? Not so simple after all. Okay, here's another one. Ostentatious listening. The name of this is ostentatious. But this is what Google said. Show team members you're listening by repeating what was just said, closing your laptop, and paying attention. We are all guilty of this one. You mind if I just take some notes? Like, just taking a few notes. Give me a break. Slack's open, my email's open. No one takes notes. Maybe every once in a while. But I'm telling you, the research says, long term, the damage done by seeing people from here up whenever you're in a meeting with their eyes diverted from you half the time is going to make me feel like what I have to contribute isn't as important. This is the Design Sprint meetup. Jake Knapp, the designer of the Design Sprint, has some beautiful language when he starts a Design Sprint workshop. He begins by saying, guys, I'd appreciate it if you left your devices out of the meeting. And if you need to use them, no problem. Step up, go outside, answer that email or take that phone call. Like, I totally get that there's some other important things going on. But what we believe is that whenever there are devices in the room, the whole room gets dumber. That's what he says verbatim. And I love it because it's not putting blame on anybody. It's saying, collectively, we're going to get dumber. Please just, and man, the fringe benefits of that, of making sure that whenever people are talking that you're looking at them and that you're making them feel heard, goes miles. They felt heard. Next one. Average social sensitivity. The ability to intuit how others felt based on their tone of voice, their expressions, and their nonverbal cues. This is simply, wow, you know what, Jennifer, you don't seem like yourself today. You all right? This is understanding that teammate that I mentioned earlier who probably would not feel great about being called on in public, and having the average social sensitivity to know that it would be better for you to meet with them in a more private space to figure out how to get them to share. This is basically, if there's something going on, and I know that internally something's going on with me, and everyone looks at me like everything's fine because they don't want the inconvenience of hearing what might be going on in my life, that feels really terrible to me. That's like an episode of Mad Men where all the girls are crying in the bathroom and Joan runs in there and tells them to buck up, like not let anybody see them feel emotions. Like, dude, that is bad news. So what does it look like for us to make sure that we're sensing where people are at and letting them know that we see them? Average social sensitivity. That's it. Equality and conversational turn taking, ostentatious listening, average social sensitivity. Any questions or comments or thoughts on those? I saw people taking notes. Wow. Okay. Oh, Simon tells us, trust and cooperation are feelings. They aren't instructions. You also need to trust each other more, and then you get this thing done. I can't make you do that. And a sense of psychological safety creates trust and cooperation. If I feel like your self-orientation is not completely in a silo for you, if I feel like you are in it for someone other than yourself, then I'm willing to experience the sensation of trust and cooperation. How, my friends, is greater than who? How we work together is more important than the specific people on the team in order for us to be effective. And this will only increase in importance as we see our ability to increase the speed of delivery without making mistakes matter more and more. And we're pushed faster every day. When I don't have trust on my team, when we aren't able to communicate honestly with one another, we hide a mistake that we might have made 2 weeks ago that we're still trying to fix on our own. And next thing you know, we miss the next ship date. And everything goes off the rails. Traditional workplaces are changing, making it more important to create resilient relationships and team cultures. My girlfriend was on a call with her remote team in India today. It was 7 p.m. their time. She also does remote calls with all of the nurses that she works with. And on the few moments that they do get together, they try to make sure that their bonds are secure, because the way we work together is changing. You know the feeling. You go to a gathering or a conference and you finally see the person that you've only talked to on the phone for years, and like you give them the biggest hug. Like, okay, so how do we create trust across borders? We can't change for the better if we can't talk about change. We're supposed to change so quickly. We're supposed to iterate. How are we going to do that if we can't talk about the need for change on our own team? Reagan, this is kind of mushy. You don't have to raise your hand, but I'm always interested. Like, did I sell everybody on this, or is there still someone in the audience who's like, dude, this is kind of mushy? So you're telling me that like there's a spectrum of like accountability and excellence. And then all the way on the other end of the spectrum is psychological safety and empathy and all of this crap about Brene Brown that I don't want to pay attention to. And you're telling me that I have to pick my slider and I have to decide, like, am I going toward, and if I leave, then I'm departing from accountability and execution and excellence. I'm letting off the gas in order to move over here to make sure that everyone's safe. Amy Edmondson has a great line. She says, I'm not asking you to let off the gas. I'm asking you to let up on the brakes. I'm asking you to let up on the walls that you've got amongst the people on your team. I'm asking you to realize that there's more than one dimension. There are two dimensions. And she has a nice little, I was a poetry major in college, by the way. And so I don't get the chance to display visual data very often and know what I'm talking about. So you're about to witness a moment of great accomplishment for me. This is a quadrant thing. And they got an x-axis and we got a y-axis. So on that spectrum of, do I have to let off the gas and move away from excellence if I want to have psychological safety on my team? The answer is no. The answer is just that we have to realize that we're on more than one dimension. So if I've got low accountability, low excellence, we're not shipping on time, and I've got low psychological safety, then my team's in the apathy zone. None of us want to be there anyway, okay? So no big deal. If I do what everyone fears and Brene Brown gets elected president and everything becomes about psychological safety, which, by the way, she gets her hair cut at the same place I get my hair cut at. One day I'm going to meet her. Then, yeah, we end up in the comfort zone of like, nothing is a fatal sin. Like, you're going to get infinite second chances, low accountability. Like, we can't live there either. But guys, here's what we're worried about, and here's where most of us find ourselves. And that's in this place where we're focused exclusively on accountability and excellence and optimization, but we've lowered our awareness, if we've got any at all, on the importance of making sure that the people on our team feel safe to contribute, to ask questions, and to offer dissenting opinions. Instead, what if we moved into the two-dimensional world and we realized that there is a third way where it's about learning? Amy Edmondson, who this is from, she's got a great TED Talk on psychological safety that you should Google, has a line that she says, what if we instead viewed work not as an execution problem, but as a learning problem? It's not about us executing the right way or the wrong way, such binary terms. It's about us learning and evolving as we go and feeling safe to admit when we don't know what's going on and ask questions. How do we get our teams to the learning zone? So I got a couple of little tools you can put in your tool belt. Some things that I've used to coach teams on how to create psychological safety, some stuff I've pulled from Google. I'm going to run through them, if that's cool. You can ask questions, and then if I miss anything at the end, think about it in your head, and then please share it out so that we can all learn from one another. I'm more than happy to send this deck to anyone who wants it afterwards. So one, of course, include all voices. Actively encourage those who tend to go with the flow or rarely share their ideas to present thoughts or suggestions. Pretty easy one. They get more complex, I promise. Think alone together. This is like a design sprint. Like, I'm pulling this straight from the book. Anytime you're in a design sprint and you invite people to write down an idea on a Post-it note privately and then share in twos and then move to fours and then with the group, what that does is it makes sure the quieter ones who would just let the people who want the microphone talk, that it makes sure that they capture their ideas and that we've got it. So on your team, if you know that you've got folks who would generally stand aside and let the freight train of opinions roll through, how do you give them a chance? So think alone together. Start with letting folks write down their ideas independently to thoughts on a note, and then invite folks to talk about that together. And then, man, if you can, particularly if you're trying to come up with new solutions, get a hold of those notes. Save them. Tell people they don't have to put their name on it if they don't want to, if they're embarrassed. But give everyone the chance to actually make a contribution. Guys, most meetings, we don't get contributions from 60% of the people. 60% of the people do not contribute. And they have something to say. I was involved with a team recently who measures it. What does it look like to create a weekly or monthly survey to send to your team reflecting on how safe each individual feels to share their opinion? This takes 3 minutes to build and 1 minute, if that, to send out on a weekly or monthly basis. What would it look like if you paid attention to that? I've got some sample questions that I'm happy to send you. I wrote a blog to accompany this talk, to like try and get more people to come to this meeting. And it's on Medium. And so find me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to share that with you. I've got some questions that I like to put in surveys to measure psychological safety. Define together. So it's one thing to say, okay, cool, so Reagan and Google think psychological safety is great, so like let's make sure that we do psychological safety on our team. And that's like, I think it was in I was in, oh yeah, Cool Runnings. Remember, you've seen Cool Runnings, right? You know, in Cool Runnings, where they're trying to find out who they're going to be as the bobsled team, and they try and start acting like the Swiss, and they're trying to go, I, spy, and they realize that that's not what they have, that's not what they can do. They got to do, feel the rhythm, right? So for your team, you've got your own jam language, so it's not going to map over if you just try and psychological safetify your team. Recognize that every team has their own language. Devote 30 minutes next time you're together to define what it looks like in words that resonate with your people, and refer to that definition every time that you meet. Psychological safety might seem like a really heady academic imposition on my culture. What if instead it ends up being the eternal love that we all share? Whatever it is for your team, man, define that together so people own it. You can't make people, especially psychological safety. Like, oh, what a terrible world to like make people. You can't do that. This is the Amy Edmondson stuff. Man, as you approach challenges, framework as a learning problem, not an execution problem. Make it explicit that there's uncertainty everywhere, and we must harness interdependence. Like literally say, we can't predict all these challenges. Like we literally need every voice. Every voice matters. And so what we're trying to do, my friends, is get better at learning together, not become perfect. Make sure people feel that. Acknowledge your own fallibility if you're in a leadership position. Simply modeling this. I know some of this stuff seems stupidly simple, but simply modeling this, like I may miss something, I need to hear from you, creates more safety. I love this one, a team that I worked with recently. Celebrate failure. Have a weekly award for someone who goes for something big and risky and comes up short. This alone will dramatically increase your team's sense of psychological safety. I did some work with a local startup, and they called this the weekly Swing and a Miss Award. Swing and a miss. And they would celebrate and cheer for the person that had the biggest swing and a miss that week, to let them know we celebrate it whenever you go for it and fall flat on your back. Like, good for you. I love that one. Yes Fest. Any improv theater fans in the room? Okay, so we know yes and is an improv theater and now kind of like a design thinking term where if I just say yes and to your ideas, that's better than saying no but, right? So I love this idea of a yes fest. So let's imagine there's two differing opinions in a room full of people. So solicit crazy ideas or challenges from the team on the specific elements of your work. Then draw at random, and a person has to pick an idea, regardless of if they agree with it or not, and get up and provide an idea. And then the rest of the team, regardless of if they agree with the idea or not, has to yes and the crap out of the idea. And then at the very end, you can reveal who suggested the ideas and give them applause. Like, this really works also if there's a disagreement. So let's say my half of the room is against your half of the room. Your half of the room gets up and presents your idea. My half of the room, who disagrees with you, has to yes and for 2 minutes until it stops. And then you repeat the favor. I have seen a crazy third direction come out of that, just because we're willing to be safe. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Lastly, boring meetings are a sign that you're lacking in psychological safety on your team. If you've got the routine meeting that we're in and we're out, most likely that means that someone's not having the bravery to ask questions. Most likely that means that someone doesn't feel comfortable presenting a new idea or a challenge or an innovative way of approaching problems. A psychologically safe team doesn't always have disagreement in meetings, but they tend to have more interesting meetings. You feel the difference? So look around, and if you've got that one of those meetings that's a recurring one on your calendar and it's kind of boring, where might you put some of these tools to practice? What else? What else are some things that you've seen in your effort to create safety on a team? Anything that comes to mind? Or any of these? Yeah, please.
So yeah, I heard this case study. It was thing from the scratch? How does it work from your perspective?
Yeah.
And really understanding that perspective of someone that just came in, or can be then maybe way more senior.
Yeah.
You never know who's the intern. Maybe that's like the next genius. I don't know.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, it sounds like regardless of your role or wherever you're at, like we're gonna protect some time for you to say, yo, if I were to come in and start this whole thing over, here's what I would do. And people give them attention and respect while they share that idea. I love it. Yeah. And even if nothing great comes of it, again, they feel like they've been heard. And we're practicing the discipline of showing our people that everyone's voice matters. It's muscle. It's muscle that we might not see now, but it's like the stabilizer muscles, that makes everything better. Core strength. It's like an ab roller. Anything else? Thank you. Any other ones that you think, man, the room would miss it if they didn't hear this one?
I'm wondering about, we need to kind of ask it. What are these talks sitting out? And what that is about my cat food.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the things we talk about in our group is the stuff that we bring in. Like, am I gonna, is what I'm saying gonna be good enough? That sort of thing. So, like, I'm actually even wondering, and maybe you have experience with it, when you say to the team, look, this is what we found. So that's what we're gonna do, and this is why we're gonna do it. Feel free to talk about it. All you got right now today is, I don't know what I can do with my cat. Please, let's talk about that. And maybe I, like, I don't know if anybody's got experience with that happening. In terms of who might be doing it, who might be looking at this out, and who being aware of that dynamic. So, can you speak to that at all, or, do you know what I'm saying? Am I making myself clear?
Let me see if I got it. So if I'm hearing you right, if I see, it's meta, like layers. So I've got something to say to the team, and this is as good as I've got, and we might not really have anything real to talk about because there's still some big questions, but I don't want there to be like silence in the room. So I might present an idea and say, cool, so go for it. Even if it's just talking about your cat food, I want to hear you talk.
Yes, as a leader of the team trying to build psychological safety in my team, it would make sense to me to say, hey guys, guess what I just learned?
Right. Yes.
So, you're helping alleviate that fear, going back to
Love it.
at the beginning, you can't have safety if you have fear.
Love it.
Alleviating that fear of not being enough with what I said.
Yeah.
By sharing that.
Yeah, because maybe I don't have all of these really important conclusions for how it's going to plug into our team, but I just want to present it as an idea because it might be sticky and helpful. Yeah. You have a thought on that?
Yeah, well, kind of piggybacking on, eliminating fear. I know I had an executive that wanted to come to our team meetings, right? And what I found is that when she was there, then people were afraid to speak out because, this is a director and they're afraid if I say the wrong thing, as also remember that my contribution is wrong. So I say properly inviting to people to the meeting is very important for
Yeah, I hear that. I hear this that with people of positional authority, often we're intimidated by them, and if we want to create safety on our team, we have to make sure that sometimes it's important for them to be there, and maybe we could have a conversation with them ahead of time, like, hey, could you maybe say something to let folks know that you welcome new and different ideas? But sometimes it might be most healthy for that team to just say, hey, let's just let this team rumble on this, and we'll come to you later with some ideas. I feel on your point, like, so, hey, I've got this psychological safety stuff. I want us to talk about it, but where do we go? The cat food thing, sure. We should be willing to listen to someone talk about their cat food. But ideally, that's not really what we're in. So I would start with I love Mad Libs and sentence starters. So here's some stuff on psychological safety. I wonder how it applies to our team, guys. This is a few things that I've heard. Could each of you start just like writing on a Post-it note with that I'm thinking or I'm feeling ... that makes me curious about X. That makes me critical about why, and here's how I think it would apply to our team. But I'd maybe like scaffold it a little bit and give them a framework. Or I wish, what if, like about what I just said about psychological safety. Maybe that would be a starter. Yeah, sure, yeah.
I think it's not necessarily a suggestion, but just kind of expanding on something you mentioned earlier around celebrating failure, I guess. My company, we have a place in our office where we kind of dubbed it the Library of Failures, and failed 3D prints and failed partner projects. And when we brought the interns in during the summer, we showed it to them, celebrated the failures that we've gone through, allowed them to contribute to it, and I think that kind of opened the door a little bit to let them understand that we're all, learning together. We fail, but we can build off of it, and I think the mantra of success through failure is really important and something that we've seen really make a difference, especially with the younger guys coming in and feeling included.
I love that. Makes you think of like the elephant graveyard and, the line, like, come and check out all this stuff that went wrong. Cool. Go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna piggyback off what you were saying. There's a thing called Hopes and Fears, where at the beginning of the meeting you have people write down their hopes for what comes out of the meeting and their fears for what comes out, and I've seen that go really well. So that kind of aligns with what you were talking about.
Or we could get back to Brene Brown because apparently she's sponsoring this evening. Whenever I love the sentence starter that she's got, I think in one of her new things, where she says, "The story I'm telling myself is." So when I hear about that psychological safety stuff, like this is where my head immediately goes. Yeah.
One thing that you do well at where I work, the company where I work, is humanize the meeting, where, okay, we're going in for a goal, but if the conversation flows somewhere else, let it flow somewhere else. You want to talk about your flat tire today and how your son stole your car and you had to take the bus, humanize the conversation. It doesn't have to try and stick with the meeting agenda, but at the same time, don't stop someone if they want to tell a funny story or something that happened with them, or, just humanize it.
Yeah. And what I often hear is people saying, so you're telling me that you want to like just let my meetings become anarchy? And it's like, no, we're not living in this dualistic either or world anymore. We're realizing that sometimes elasticity in the conversation during a meeting is necessary to create depth in the relationships of your team. Sir.
I have a psychological safety test for this meeting we're having right now. I don't know who Brene Brown is that you've been talking about.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much. Dude, my bad for not making sure that everyone knew that. Thank you. She is out of the University of Houston. She had like the most explosive TEDx talk ever about 8 years ago about the power of vulnerability. So, and it wasn't just coming from like a self-help perspective. She did deep research on vulnerability and shame and belonging. And so since then, she's kind of been the vanguard of what does it look like to create spaces and workplaces that are safe, where people belong. And she just had a Netflix special come out recently. Yeah. I forget what it's about. Yeah. So thank you for asking. And man, she's an awesome voice when it comes to making sure that people feel like they belong. Yeah.
So I have a question about how do you help convince people that already feel meetings are not productive? Like maybe you do have conversations that aren't always related to the business goal. How do you convince them that this isn't a waste of time, or like that this can still help meetings be productive? Do you know what I'm asking?
Can you say it one more different way?
Yeah, sure. So I think a lot of people hate meetings. And feel like they're not always the most productive use of time. And so introducing a concept like this seems like it could be counterintuitive for people that already feel that way.
Yeah, so you're already wasting my time and you're telling me that we got to add like a 15-minute buffer on the front and back end to make sure everybody feels safe?
Or we're just like having conversations to make people feel safe in a meeting that we don't even need.
Yeah, totally. Interesting point. So there's totally this tangent of let's kill all meetings we don't need, definitely. But the ones that we do need, let's make sure that they're safe. If you've got the person who's in the meeting and they don't have control over whether or not that meeting happens, they've got to be there anyway. and they're going to bemoan this psychological safety stuff because I got to be here anyway. It's already a waste of my time. Now you're going to add this other layer of inefficiency on the meeting. So my bold, direct move, like varsity level move, would be if I were to hear a comment like that, to say, "How are you? Like, how you doing? What's going on?" That's me, level one. And that's not always appropriate, right? As evidenced by the reactions in the room. Maybe that's not the right way to meet someone there. I would say, yeah, from my perspective, it kind of seems like this is going to add some value to people in the room, particularly those that don't get to share very often. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Can you help me understand a little bit where you're in disagreement there?
Would you ever engage with like maybe people that you can tell aren't engaged with your new style outside of the meeting, or yeah?
Always outside, yeah. And I saw something recently about the importance of interventions, and it's a stay away from why questions. Because if I hear a why question, I'm going to be inclined to defend my position. So instead of saying, why do you feel that way? Or why are you against me? You could say, what makes you? Or how are you feeling that causes you to have that opinion? So what and how questions are more effective to de-escalate. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of even creating safety if you're a person planning that meeting is clearly setting an expectation or like a desired outcome of a meeting. And I think that allows people to have or feel safer with what the expectation is on them, but also as a group. If those are unclear, sometimes it feels a lot less safe or it feels like this is a waste of my time. But if there's an understanding or even time built in for people to, lead each other or do another meeting or a recap or a retrospective, like if people understand the outcome that you're trying to get to, the purpose of what you're doing, and you can build it in as someone who organizes and plans a meeting, it shows someone that you actually respected their time, you've respected their input as a group, and I think it really just helps. Like I'm like that efficiency person too. Like I always have to kind of fight against that, but making sure that I'm communicating like with the intent and what the desired outcome is, and then it also allows people to clarify. Like if they're coming out of that meeting and they don't understand the outcome or they don't understand, then I think it provides safety for them to also say, hey, that wasn't really clear.
Yes.
There is purpose here. Am I contributing or did I get it? Are we aligned? Like those kinds of things.
Love it. And if we're going to be evangelists of psychological safety, we can't get pissed off at the people who don't understand psychological safety. Like they have to, it has to be okay for them to not feel it. And Jara, thanks for bringing up this like really important point. Every meeting is not supposed to be a yoga retreat. Like sometimes for us to be the effective team that we can be whenever we've got psychological safety, that means that we have to begin the meeting on time and say, let's dispense with the niceties and let's get to work. It just means, again, remember, we're not in dualities anymore. We're weaving it together. It means that the team can both slow down when we need to take care of the internal lives of our people and call it like it is on a day that we just got to get shit done. Like we can jump between the two. And I want to make sure that that's really clear in what I've learned. Like we've got to be able to do both, and a team that's safe can. Sir.
So there is a lot to say about meetings that sometimes you don't have the clear intent. So you have like a bunch of meetings scheduled in your week. But usually when we start, and it really worked for me, so on every new project, we don't have the structure yet for all the meetings. So we usually start with this, we call it a quote exercise. So it's like a 1 hour, 2 hours maybe. So we throw a cross in the boat that is like a sea level, and there's a wind that moves us forward, and there's also anchor that slows us down. And you basically say what are the things that move us forward, and what are the things that slow us down. And slowly, in the end, you basically there's this like work together alone. There are many different things, and you prioritize together things that you let's experiment, let's try new things that will help us get there? What's that North Star that we're striving? That can be like island or a little star, depending how you do it. It's called Lightning Decision Jam. It's really helpful if you don't have that clarity yet built into that team. So if there's a bunch of meetings that very unstructured, nobody really knows, but you're trying to like improve things, maybe that's a good sort of exercise to start with, and then slowly get rid of the meetings and do like a clean up that calendar for everyone.
I love that. Just at the base level, it's just making sure that everyone feels like they've had an opportunity to contribute into what we all say the direction is, or what we all say reality is. And it sucks whenever I'm told to believe in a reality that I didn't get to have a chance in voicing my thoughts into. Yeah. Ooh, good stuff. Awesome. Who's responsible for psychological safety? Everybody. Brene Brown, yeah. This is everybody sells, right? Like who sells? Everybody. So oftentimes people ask me, I'm not the leader of my team. I'm not the scrum master. How am I going to bring psychological safety to my team? And the answer is like really simply this: brave and difficult conversations that you want to avoid having. And it's not embarrassing people. It's not doing it in front of people. I think it's definitely pulling stakeholders and voices that guide conversations aside and let them know, not in an accusatory way, but in a supportive way. I believe in this team. I feel like there's some things that are holding us back. What might it look like if we tried to address some of these issues and start there as a starting point? But unfortunately, that's the dragon that we have to slay first, is bringing awareness to this. And I'd love to talk to you about that if that's something you're thinking about doing. Real quickly, I'm interested, just like think about one thing that you might try. It might be a conversation. It might be in a meeting that you've got coming up later this week. You know that there's one individual who often shies back. And you might let them know ahead of the meeting, like, hey, I'd really love to hear from you today. I remember you said that thing last week. Can you expound on that? Or you might be that person that's a little shy, and you might try and take a risk and speak up. I'd be interested if there's someone that might need to be held accountable for this, if there's a conversation you might have. Sometimes I like to think, like, tomorrow, this week, this month, maybe that's a helpful framework for you. But think about something that you might try. And as we wrap up, what is this really about? I kind of said at the beginning. I think it really does come down to fear. I think it comes down to a desire for survival, and we interpret that today as being accepted. And so we create organizations based around a hierarchy of, am I in or am I out? Am I an alpha or am I not? And so at the very core level, in order for us to work at eradicating fear from our organizations, because we never will completely, and that's okay. Like, we're engaged in a process, and that's the goal. What this is really about is first starting with ourselves. And this is an inside job. And we can't share psychological safety with a team if we haven't learned some of the beginning tools of how to be a little bit more invincible, by realizing that regardless of if our idea landed or not, regardless of if our opinion was accepted or not, regardless of whether or not they liked it when I challenged their thought or not, I'm going to be okay. And man, if we can share that with our teams, when we don't believe that a failure, when we don't believe the stakes are so high on failing on our team, what we end up being able to do is perform in brave and courageous and innovative ways that we never would have been able to otherwise. Because when we play scared, whenever we're afraid, we're never going to make the game-changing, innovative idea happen. But whenever we've got nothing to lose, because we know that there's no consequences for having a crappy idea on a Thursday, we might then really offer something really meaningful. You feel me on that? So, My friends, thank you for being with us tonight. It's an honor to have your ear. Thanks for collaborating with one another and for making this a safe place to be. I write about this kind of stuff. I send out a blog on Wednesday mornings. I'd love it if you join me there and would love to chat with you afterward. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And the next meetup will be December 3rd. So typically they're on the second Tuesday of every month, but it'll be moved up just for next month. So we hope to see you back here in a month from now. Thank you guys so much for coming.